Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm joined by my friend Michelle here, who is just, first of all, an amazing human. But secondly, she has a crazy, inspiring, motivating, relatable story of hardship and just finding herself that I think is going to come out into the world soon. And I want you to be along for the journey. Beyond that, she also has some amazing tools. And today we're going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about the Enneagram. We're going to talk about how to find yourself, how to live authentically. If you listen, you know that's a huge core value of mine. And ultimately, if you're a leader, I think you're going to want to pull up a chair and listen to this episode too. All in all, Michelle, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Welcome to Get Shit Done.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Totally. So, you meet someone on the street today. How do you explain what current you does?
I would say I am a trained therapist and I'm also a leadership coach, specializing in self awareness and others' awareness.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. And I love knowing your backstory of how you got to where you are. And this really comes from a place of living out your purpose and also having the, how do I say this delicately? Having the appropriate credentials to really take all of these tools and leverage them in a way where you're not just saying, hey, we should understand people. Like, you understand the science and you have the professional career to back up the stuff that you're teaching and implementing. And I just have so much respect for you and your journey and how you got to this place. So, for those that don't know, do you mind explaining a little bit of your backstory and how you got into the initial career that you did? And then how did you evolve that into what you're doing now?
Yeah, for sure. I think initially I was part of a religious system that kind of put women secondary. And so there were only specific jobs that women could have, and they needed to be in the helping profession. And so while I've always found people intriguing and loved the field of psychology, one of the options was to become a therapist. And so I ended up in that space of being a therapist. I love the work there. Like I said, I find humans incredibly intriguing, their stories, the way they heal, all those things. And so I've enjoyed that field, but really wanting to take it into a space of higher action. A lot of times in therapy, you're working with the backstory for a really long time and really needing to see um, people understand themselves and move towards their goals and more of lifestyle changes for them at a faster pace. And so that's really what has spurred me on in that direction. As far as the Enneagram is concerned, being part of this religious system, somebody presented it to me years ago, and the symbol on around the Enneagram looked um, scary, should we say? Like something I shouldn't dabble in as a religious person. And so kind of put it away, shelved it, and then it became kind of the trendiagram, and you would see it everywhere. People were talking about who, what their type was, and it became something kind of fun. And so I was like curious, did a short assessment, and was mistyped actually. So I mistyped as a one, and which is the perfectionist. And looking back at that time in my life, I was a mom of five kids at home. I was running everywhere. I was solely in charge of my children, and also a part of this again this big system that I had certain expectations and requirements to participate in. And so I was really stressed. And if you know anything about the Enneagram, there's lines in the middle, and my particular type goes to a one when they're under stress. And so when I retook the Enneagram and became certified in it, I recognized that I was a type seven. And so it was fascinating for me to be able to put words to my type, to who I am and how I want to show up in the world, understand my blind spots, and so I can grow. And we would call it integrate. Um, and we keep on growing every day. So I think that's the backstory around the Enneagram and kind of the work that I do.
Yeah, I'm sure you're listening and you're like, action. Of course, this is why Kelsey had Michelle on because we for sure are on the same page with that. I think it's important to have that awareness and just understanding of yourself, of others, but then there is that huge step of taking action. And I'm just so grateful to have your wisdom on this episode because I think honestly that's the missing link between finding a trendy Enneagram, Instagram, and sharing some things versus how do I actually live with that? What does that look like
Yeah.
when I'm my best self? What does that look like when I'm really struggling or anxious or stressed or have different factors contributing to how I'm acting? what does that look like? And I think your approach to it is so unique and tactical that I'm grateful for your brain on this, truly.
Well, and I think, we can look at social media, we could look at different places where the Enneagram is put out there, and you can identify probably, your type in that space. But unless you have a mirror, you have somebody coming alongside of you and saying, "Hey, do you notice that you do this?" Right? This is a thing. So, for instance, in the business realm, I had a colleague, and I would send text messages constantly through the day. I would send podcasts and books and quotes constantly. And she was getting peppered all day long, kind of looked like Kramer on Seinfeld, how he comes in the door with everything I was giving her. And she said, "Well, maybe I just need to figure you out better. Maybe I need to get used to how you show up." But it was really a message for me on going, actually, that's probably not a good way for me to show up as a leader. And I probably need to just put a whole list on my computer, make a document that says, these are books that I like, these are quotes that I like, these are podcasts that I listen to that would be worth sharing. And at the end of the week, I'll go through them and send what's relevant.
Mm.
So I needed her feedback in order for me to step into a better leadership position.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to me, and this is just the type of clients I'm working with now, and more is this piece of leadership because the people I work with, I mean, Michelle knows because we've talked about this, but it's you're great at what you do, you love what you do, but you can't do it all on your own, and your business is at a place where you need that support. So you bring somebody on and then balls get dropped. And then you put stuff back on your plate. And then you're let down or frustrated or they do something quote unquote wrong and you're not sure how to navigate that conversation. Or on the flip side, you hire someone and they're the right fit. You can't really put words to it. It's hard to put your finger on it and explain why, but it just feels right. And I think behind the scenes a big piece of that puzzle is partially probably the Enneagram, just certain
Yeah.
tendencies that people have. And I'm an 8 wing 7, which is why Michelle and I are buddies. I mean, for many reasons, but when we met, we guessed, and I was like, that checks out.
Yeah.
And that being said, though, there's certain types where it's just easy, it flows, it makes sense. And there's other ones where we have to be just a little bit more self aware and accommodate. So, from your experience, for the business owners listening, what advice would you give just in understanding themselves first and maybe how to make those adjustments, like you just spoke to? What advice would you give to that entrepreneur listening?
Yeah, for sure. Well, hire a coach that understands the Enneagram, or it
Yeah.
can give you words to understand your strengths and your blind spots. We all have those, so there's no shame. It's just a matter of being curious about how am I showing up. And, once you start giving yourself these words around who you are and how you're showing up, it becomes much easier for you that's your self awareness. And then you can become others aware. Oh, somebody's different than me. I can't expect two of me in this job situation. That would actually be horrible because I'm not strong in X, Y, and Z. And they bring that to the table. And then being able to lead hard conversations. I call them, difficult conversations instead of conflict because nobody likes conflict. And so we enter, multiple conversations around something that um, might have lit you up, we would say, right? And so
Yeah.
if my head is, my brain is going offline, I need to learn how to handle that if somebody's not, I'm making assumptions about someone else in that space.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think people get wrong when it comes to the Enneagram? Meaning, like, if they're reading material or they're seeking out stuff just on the internet, not really speaking to a professional, what do you feel like people get wrong with it?
I think with a lot of personality assessments, assessments you take in the workplace, there's this place of saying, this is who I am and you're stuck with me.
Mm.
And the beauty about the Enneagram is it's a tool that is absolutely about growth. It's actually, all about self-awareness on any given moment of any given day. And so I might be tired or hangry or whatever it is, and I need to recognize that that's going on in my entire body. And so I'm going to, give myself grace or give somebody else grace for the way that they show up. I think, we do this typing and we go, yeah, I have monkey mind or I throw things out all the time and you're just stuck with that. Everybody in the world, instead of going, how do I kind of rein that in and use that in a way that's positive for everybody else that's encountering me?
Yeah, for sure. And then when it comes to leadership, I think if I'm hearing you right, there's like you have to understand yourself and your
Yeah.
tendencies, but then you also have to understand other people. So,
Yeah.
do you have your team take the Enneagram? Do you all
Oh,
share what
totally.
yours are? Like, what's your advice for those people?
Yeah, for sure. There's I do a women's cohort. So right now I'm working with an international school, and there are women leaders at the school. And, so interesting because they're like, oh, I see how you do that. I see how you show up. And so my approach to you around X, Y, and Z needs to be a little bit different. I need to pause and give thought to how I'm going to give you feedback because I understand how you're taking it. Or I see where your strengths are, and that would be really helpful for me putting something together. And so on a team, it works really well to be able to say, here's how you communicate, here's how I communicate, here's how you deal with conflict, vice versa. Here's feedback, here's how we set goals per our personality. And so it's a wonderful tool to be able to use between people, marriages, relationships, and especially in the workplace.
I I there's something you said that was so simple in there, but I think is really powerful and is worth repeating. It's this idea of like, what if you shared how to have conversations with me before we have to have a hard conversation or feedback, or if I need like information given to me, like what if we all just brought that to the table before we actually have to practice
Yeah,
that thing?
yeah.
That's
And we kind of
crazy.
know. Yeah, I mean, I have a whole list of one pagers that you can have for yourself and for who you're working with, your teammate. And so you can kind of look at that before. And it's a lot of stuff is just about giving pause. Like, okay, I have this thing I need to do. Who is it that I'm going to talk to? How do I know that they show up? Um, because what we know is in the end game in business and in relationship, the ROI is increased by self-awareness. And so you're saving time and money by understanding who you're working with.
Mm,
There's an
yeah,
efficiency. Yeah, there's an efficiency on how you're communicating once you start understanding it.
interesting. Okay, now now that you're also applying this, I mean, I know in therapy you also had your own practice, but now that you have your own business and you're scaling and you're working on a book and some other cool stuff too,
Right.
how does your Enneagram show up for you as an entrepreneur? And then thinking about the kind of help and support you're seeking in your business, whether that's contract employees or future hires or whatever. I'm just curious, does that shift? Has that shifted for you being an entrepreneur and thinking more of that hat or not so much?
Oh, for sure. And the
Okay.
type 7 for everyone out there is
Yeah, define it real quick.
is the visionary. It is the big picture thinker. And so for me, the details are like I'm dead in the details. And I'm, for right now, one of my editors for my book or, my team that I'm working with is constantly pulling me back. So I step too far ahead. I'm future driven. I was sending out emails, 4 months ahead of time that I needed to. The product wasn't ready yet. And so that for me is the place where I need somebody that goes, what are we doing today? Here's the goals for today, because I'm massively future driven. And so in that space of being an entrepreneur, I also think in collage. And
Mm.
so it's just I need somebody to go, here's the spreadsheet that you're going to check the boxes off on. And I can't do spreadsheets. So I heard that your husband's really good at them, so maybe we'll get him in the mix.
I can't remember what his is. I'll have to have him take it again. But yeah, yeah, we're couldn't be more opposite, but it's complementary. That was another question I had too. Do you feel like are there certain types that tend to be entrepreneurs, or does it just depend, or is there not enough data to really gather that?
Yeah, I think all the types, I've seen entrepreneurs in all the types actually. You will see more eights and threes possibly in that space. Threes are competitive and achieving, and eights are anti-control. They have big picture in mind and a huge social justice piece. Um, but I've seen across the spectrum of people doing it. And I think in that space, when they are doing it themselves, they are collaborating, getting people on board to help them where they don't have strengths.
Mm. That piece where they don't have strengths, I think is so important. If you're listening, underline that. Here's why. When I am coaching business owners, a lot of their favorite team members are people who are quote unquote just like them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a small business kind of snag that happens sometimes where it's almost like your like safety net or like your comfy blanket where it's just like
Yeah.
it's a safe place. It's someone who gets you. It's someone you can vent to and who can support you. But oftentimes as an entrepreneur, I mean, there's a reason Enneagram has a spectrum of different skills. It's not just like there's one, like it goes up to nine, right?
Yeah.
Nine. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. It goes
Yeah.
up to nine. There's a reason because there's all kinds of different people and we all need each other. I need what Michelle has. I need that visionary side. I dip my toe that direction, but I'm not fully in there. And I think it's important to identify that and work on it. And what I notice is I'm just like live processing this, but I'm like, I think business owners should take the Enneagram, have their team take it and see what gaps exist. And then they should hire accordingly, according to those gaps. I'm wondering if you've been a part of that journey with entrepreneurs or you've seen it just in leadership, if that kind of holds true.
Yeah, that does hold true. It can get a little sticky in those spaces because if we're hiring, um, so for an onboarding process, for example,
Yeah.
I don't know if I've done that before. Just kidding. When I've done an onboarding for a company and we've used the Enneagram for new hires, it gets a little sticky because we want to make sure we're getting the most qualified person and not just hiring for type.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, we can learn skills, we can sit in that direction. Um, but by and large, I think, people will hire people that are like them because they can communicate well with them.
Mm,
Right? We check the boxes off. We're on the same page. I see this, but then there's a huge deficit um, for the things that really need to be addressed. And we have a really hard time dealing with those difficult conversations about things that are different. And this is, I'm going to talk about the book real quick here, but we have this idea that we need to live in these black and white spaces. And so if you're like me, great. If you're not like me, I cancel you. And so being able to embrace difference, being able to embrace complexity of how somebody's showing up, understanding their backstory, understanding a little bit about what's going on for them, how they got to where they are. Actually, just had a very interesting conversation yesterday with a friend of mine around warm demanders. And as business owners, this is a really interesting place, interesting discussion to have being the boss and being the person in charge, knowing enough about your people, knowing their Enneagram type, knowing a little bit about their story, their personal life, and then you can demand things from them at work because they trust you and you've developed that relationship with them. And so the Enneagram is a great place to start with that.
yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I also think when you were talking about black and white, I'm like, no wonder that's hard for some Enneagram types and just people in general because entrepreneurship is so gray. And I would argue there's parts of entrepreneurship that you as the business owner have to create that black and white, like finances, for instance,
For
or
sure.
what are our core offerings, or what are my expectations? Not just like I want you to do a good job, but what does good mean? What does that mean to me? And how do I ensure that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
also understand that and we can have a constructive conversation if that's not happening? There's so much gray in entrepreneurship, and I'm just having a light bulb go off. I'm like, I bet there's clients that I have who just kind of based off their type and how they see things and the structure they kind of crave and need, that can be really difficult. And so the more we can create that black and white as much as you can in business, that's going to give them more tools.
Yeah.
I don't know. You just kind of blew my mind in that the
Well, and
black white gray combo for sure.
yeah, for sure. And it is so necessary to build the structure, right? We need to
Yeah.
build the container is, what a lot of people would say. We need to build, the finances, your goals, your values, all those things definitely need to be built. And then you can mess with what's inside the container.
Yes. I love
So
that. So
yeah.
true. I'm like, you need to hire people who are opposite you and add to the mix. I just also visualize the room of visionaries and I'm like, lots of great ideas. I don't know how much would get done.
Right.
And then I picture a room of all perfectionists and I'm like, also not much would get done. And so I just think that we need each other. And whether they're on your team or you're seeking out community and you're joining maybe a mastermind or a cohort, we need to be in community with others who are similar but also different and use that as opportunities to learn and
Yeah.
grow with each other too.
Yeah. Like I would not want a whole team made up of me.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, same, same.
I
Yeah,
would
and I
not want to
think
be married to me either.
No, love you. Yeah, no way. No, and I think that's important to know. You mentioned hard conversations a couple times. So if you're cool with it, I kind of want to go there a bit.
Sure.
Business owners, I think most of us, we avoid this because it's hard. We know deep down, like whether it's letting somebody go or just communicating expectations that we didn't set in the beginning or setting boundaries or whatever that looks like. I think you haven't been a successful business owner unless you've had to have one, right? So
Oh,
what are some tools from your experience and your career that you would and your experience being a business owner, but also like your background in your education, what tools could you provide people listening who maybe are putting something off or having to have a hard conversation soon?
yeah. I think that the first part is understanding that it's not a one and done. We just want to get over that hard conversation. We want to throw it all out there at people. If you were working for me, I'd sit here and go, Kelsey, blah 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 blah. You did this, and this is what's going to need to happen, and we're done with this hard conversation. Bye bye. Right. And understanding that it is the biggest thing we want to do is try to keep each other online during that conversation. And what I mean by that is our prefrontal cortex goes offline when we feel threatened, and a lot of times those conversations feel threatening. So we go to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and we are not hearing anything that the person's telling us. And so it's really helpful to begin with just kind of a preamble, just a little drop a nugget, send an email, say, hey, I need to schedule this meeting with you, and here's a little bit about what it's going to be about to help them get prepared. Nobody likes to be unprepared for any of those kind of conversations. And so, and then then I call it under further review. So, my boys all play football. I know you're a big football fan over there, and the referee throws the flag, the coach challenges it. The referee goes over to his little camera, sets it up, and it's looking in it, seeing all the angles. And so, if you're as the business owner needing to talk to an employee, you're gonna ask more about the story. What went on here for you? So it's under further review. Let's see all the angles of going on. I'm interpreting it this one way, but let me look at it a different way. Or we want to have this preamble. We want to say, hey, I need to have a hard conversation with you. What's the best way for me to give you feedback? Again, it's just this, it's very much about relationship. It's about trust. It's about building that space between us instead of just treating you, as just another person. You want the people you work with to be for you.
Yeah.
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 And then understanding it's multiple conversations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's huge. And I think you're right. So many people chalk it up to I need to have that conversation. I need to have that one conversation. And you just said, no, you don't. You need to have multiple.
yeah, yeah.
Man, I can think of that in life. I can think about that in
Right,
business. That's so
right,
true.
right. I mean, and if you think about, this image of I'm flipping my lid, right? And so this is my prefrontal cortex. It goes offline, and I'm in my caveman space here. This is my caveman brain and my brain stem. And if I say something I could say something so simple like, hey, we need to have a conversation, and somebody goes like this, right? They flip their lid, and so I need to give them space to get this back online so we actually have something that is worth working with in that space,
How,
that something concrete happens.
how do you, okay, what signs, like what is happening physically? What are you seeing into where you know that is happening? And then what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, if you see it happening, you can kind of see them zoned out, or they might start sweating. You think of that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So fight is they're coming back at you. They're stabbing you. They're telling you all the things that you do wrong, and they may not mean it, but it's their protective measure. And so it's part of our design. It's part of how we're made to protect ourselves. But there's no more lions out there anymore. And so the flight part is they're avoiding. I'm out of here. I'm sorry. I'm not coming into work tomorrow. I don't like you anymore. I'm going to make you pay. I'm not going to return your email for 24 hours, whatever it is. This freeze spot, you'll see that very visually on somebody's face. This is the I'm checked out. It might look like, for women, it might look like resting bitch face. And so you think that they're being mean, or this place of like, oh, okay, you're avoiding me, but they're really checked out inside. And then and I think those are all worth conversations. The fawn piece is they will come after you and they will try to make everything okay. They're
Mm.
gonna shine your shoes. They just don't want to deal with the conflict. Okay, whatever you say. Okay, I get it. Okay, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do better. Right. Instead of really sitting in that space of going, okay, I recognize what I did. Here's how I'm receiving that. I'll own it and I'll change. And so you, I think again, in the work that you can do with a coach or understanding this on your own of understanding how is your employee showing up in that space? How are you showing up? Because you generally go towards one with a specific person,
Whoa.
right? Yeah.
I'm going to send this to all my clients. This is so good. It's true. And I think that the unfortunate part of small business is there's not a lot of these conversations that are said in a way that applies to small business problems.
Yeah.
There's leadership from the context of corporate, and there's therapy from the context of therapy and like how you're living your personal life. But I think what we're doing today and why I was so excited to talk about this is I think so much of this applies to this middle ground of still figuring out ours, like myself and how I am in this world, but also as I'm starting to bring on one person and then two people and then they're communicating, and just the more you bring to the mix, and then you have your clients and how you're communicating with them. Like this is a constant muscle that I think so many people don't realize they need to be building.
Yeah. And Kelsey, you asked like how do you get out of it once you get your lid flipped? It takes about 20 minutes. And so being able to say, I need to step away, or can we finish this conversation tomorrow? And that's why it's multiple conversations. They may come back and they may say, I heard you say X, Y, and Z, you're not nice. And then you get flipped. Right. And so the idea is we really want to stay online to have these hard conversations. And so that's why it's multiple conversations of going, okay. And in that space, if you see me getting flipped, whatever that is, you can say, what did you hear me say? And I'll say something and you're like, I didn't say that at all. I didn't say you were the worst employee on the face of the planet. So it's really interesting how people are filtering information that's coming towards them, especially personal. We personalize everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so good. I love that so much. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about it because it's in progress, it's happening. Do you mind sharing a little bit about why the heck you wrote a book and where we're at today and how the people can support you with that journey? Because I think
Yeah.
what you're doing is so important, and I love this touches on it, but there's so much more to it. So yeah, why
Yeah.
why a book?
Yeah. The book was written as a coaching tool. It has a part of it that is called the packing list, and it's really how do you have ownership of your life. The reason I wrote the book, it's a journey of all of the work I've had to do personally, and the journey, and the work that I do with individuals in coaching and in therapy. So I had found myself in a situation where, for 25 years, where I was part of a community that I call a community of certainty. They had all the right answers, and you just kind of fell in line with what the answers were. And so this black and white thinking. There's no gray. There's no complexity. Here's the answer for everything in the world. I landed there because I was looking for safety. And again, it's a physiological thing that we all need. I'd been in a couple of traumatic situations, and I just thought, if you can tell me how I can stay safe, I will do whatever you tell me. So 25 years later, I find myself in this place, and it's in realizing certainty doesn't exist for a lot of things, and was finding myself unable to get out of this particular community. And so really, I'll leave that for you to read in the book of what happened, but it's really my journey of how I owned my own life, how I came out of a place of, imposter syndrome or massive burnout because I wasn't being able to show up for how I was designed.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that
Yeah.
and will find value in it. And I love Michelle's devotion to awareness and action, and I just think that's a special formula that's so important. And I hope that people listening to this, A, you can find two people who cheer you on, support you, but
Yeah.
B, some tools to help you work your way through this, because we're all a work in progress. We all have work to be done, but
Yeah.
like there's steps we can take, there's strategy, there's conversations to be had, and there is a world that can exist beyond what you're experiencing today.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that's the idea. There's no arrival. We're always on a journey.
Yeah.
We're all beginners of, at some point on everything we're doing. As entrepreneurs, you're always a beginner. Um, and bringing that curiosity of like, okay, what's next? Or this isn't working, or, those specific things of being aware. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that you're a great asset. I would love people to connect with you and support you in this journey. So, where's the best place for them to get involved?
Sure. My website is great. So you can subscribe there. You can join my author journey as I publish and edit, and I will give more information about even what that process looks like in case you're interested in writing a book, which is an amazing process. So I'd cheer anybody on that wants to try to do that. I am doing a crowdfunding campaign this next month. So there's perks, book signings, book launches, all of that. And so I will give you the landing page for that, Kelsey.
Perfect.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, we'll make sure to have all of that listed in the show notes. And Michelle, thank you so much for being on. For my leaders listening to this episode, I really hope you take this opportunity to dive a little deeper into yourself. I highly recommend hiring a coach just to clarify some of the information you get because I think it's so valuable. And from there, just get to know your people, get to know your team, get to understand and know what you're working with. And then I
Mhm.
think they'll provide some clarity on what potential gaps or opportunities exist in your business. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to add that. Michelle's great. I had her do mine and it was so enlightening and encouraging too. And yeah, I just want to thank you so much for your time today and sharing all the wisdom that you have.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed seeing you again too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And definitely take a look at our show notes. Thank you very much for listening. And thanks again, Michelle. You're amazing. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.